Welcome to our Devos. Thank you for joining us this week. And I've been in the ministry for almost actually more than half of my life. More than half of my life has been spent in church work. But I did spend a good bit of time in the corporate world before I started working in the ministry. And I landed this job one time for a company where I was a temp. And the main leader was out on a medical leave. The person that I was temping for at this is a huge bank downtown, massive, all these branches, different things. And I was on like the top floor in this building. It was really cool. I loved it, but I was only a temp. So we were all working, and I was working as best as I could doing the job. I was good at that job, but it was pretty uneventful. Like right now, I'm certain that this job will be replaced by AI. If you're really bored one day, I'll tell you what the job was. It's so boring. But my point is, there was a couple guys that I worked with, and they had been there so long that they learned, and they were just goofing around a lot of times. Like they knew how to take their work and distribute it where it would balance out all day, and then they would just goof off. They kind of milk the clock. They would take like an hour to go to the restroom. Guys like this. Some of you, unfortunately, you might be guys like this. These were two men that I worked with. Now, I liked them a lot, but I didn't work like that because I was trying to do the best, and I really wanted to stay there at that job. So my point is, one day, the person that was in charge of the department came back 2 weeks ahead of what she was supposed to be coming back. And when she came in, now I had never met her, so this was my first time meeting her, so I wasn't nervous or anything. I didn't have any dog in this fight, so to speak. But when these two guys saw her come in, and they were in the middle of doing like the way they normally were doing and goofing off, their whole demeanor changed. Like they were nervous. You could tell they were stammering. They were kind of worried about what was going to be like because she wanted to have one-on-ones with all of us and talk about logistics, like what we had done. And it was so entertaining to watch because they were working and living as if she was never coming back. And there was never going to be this check-in where they were actually going to connect to her. Well, this is unfortunately the way most of us live as managers of God's things. We act as though we're not going to be held accountable. So take note of this. You want to live with accountability in mind. Now, I talked a little bit about this over the weekend, and I think it's important to realize when we talk about accountability, I want you to realize that there's a couple different schools of thought, and I want to kind of shred this down. You see, because according to Romans chapter 14, verse 12, it says, so each one of us will give an account of himself to God. Now, Pastor Mike is the king on explaining how this works from a reward standpoint, but every single Christian must stand before God and give an account. And a lot of times what we as Christians will worry about is, I sinned, and one day I have to answer to God for how I sinned and how I broke his commands and how, I did this evil thing, and he's going to judge me when he sees me. Well, now this is a little deeper than what we're used to going to here, but I'm going to try to explain it. That's not theologically accurate. Now, this is a quiz. What happened to our sin? It was nailed to the cross, right? So the judgment that was reserved for our sinfulness took place when Jesus absorbed it on the cross. So when we stand before God, it's not going to be to give an account for, like, you said this was evil, you sinned here, you did this, you did that. It's not going to be like that, but what's going to be evaluated, and pay attention to this because this is what nobody is thinking about, is what we did with the life that we've been given. This is where, if you look in the book of Revelation, there's this idea of rewards and hierarchies of, who gets to be given certain things and certain responsibilities. Those rewards are given as a result of the faithfulness we had as stewards, as managers. And that we give an account for. We give an account for our words, how we used our words. We give an account for our time. We give an account for the gifts that he gave us. Like, he's given us all spiritual gifts. These are things, like, we are going to have an inventory done of how we have lived for him. Now, this shouldn't make you afraid, but this should make you live a little bit differently because God has gifted you uniquely in your life with certain resources that only he's gifted you. There's things that only you can do. And if you're not doing what you know you ought to do, when you meet him, you're going to experience that loss of, like, I could have been doing this. You're not going to be punished. He's not going to say, oh, you know what, you really messed this up. You didn't stir your gifts up. You're going to hell. No, but you're going to miss out on this idea that you managed and you were found faithful. So I don't want that to be the case for the church. So you want to realize and live your life as if you are going to hold an account with him someday. You're going to be given an account for how you've managed what he's given you, all the things, the adversities and all the joys, and how you've reacted to certain trials. God is going to take an account of that. And as a manager, you want to live with accountability in mind.